The game show portion of our show here with Elizabeth Leggett, just outside of where she lives, doing a bit of research because we're about to introduce you to the authors of Conflict is for the Birds. What would you most consider yourself like? An owl, an ostrich, a parakeet, a hummingbird, or a woodpecker?
Well, now that's a very difficult question.
Personality-wise.
I don't know. I think I would prompt for the owl because it's one of my favorite birds.
I would say you're an owl too, especially just with age comes wisdom, and you can certainly wear that card. I don't know what Gayle, Wiebe, Oudeh, or Nabil Oudeh would call themselves. What are you in terms of that list?
Well, I'd like to say I do a little bit of them all, but my husband will tell you I'm probably an ostrich.
Yeah, he is. And I'm a hummingbird.
I think I'm a hummingbird too in reading the book. And let's just talk about why you wrote the book Conflict is for the Birds. You are in the conflict resolution business.
Right, we are.
Which I find really interesting because you're married, and boy, talk about adding potential fuel to a fire. You're resolving what kinds of conflicts, Gayle?
We deal mostly with workplace conflict, but it's really not that different from family conflict situations either. So we use our own personal lives as examples of what not to do sometimes.
Now, I'm guessing because you said Gayle is an ostrich that you just like conflict to go away. You stick your head in the sand.
Absolutely. I'd prefer to ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist.
And what do you do?
I just hound her. I keep hounding all the time because as a hummingbird, I would like resolution. And I like to create options for resolution. So initially, when we start talking about conflict, she doesn't want to deal with it, and I'm the one who just will keep egging her on to actually do something about it. But at the same time, as we will find, each person migrates, and we tend to meet at the owl. So that's a kind of interesting kind of movement. So
well, we wanted you to be here with us today because, I mean, we're talking all about birds, and of course we're with such a celebrated birder. Why did you decide to use birds to explain your concepts?
Well, I think we were looking for something that wouldn't immediately insinuate judgment one way or the other, and we were also looking for a metaphor that people could easily recognize and see a connection. And what we found is that people have found the metaphors that we use of the birds really memorable and a way to remember, oh, this is the way I approach it, or this is the way I should approach this kind of situation.
Are we missing the boat in terms of how we deal with conflict, Nabil? What should we all be doing? Who should we all be more like?
Well, you know, the idea what we actually emphasize in our book is actually we should use all of them because each situation necessitates different response. So if you and I would, you know, just barely get to know each other, we'd like to get to know each other more, we have some issues, maybe we should be the owl is very important. But sometimes if we don't have much time and we need to negotiate, maybe use the hummingbird. And sometimes, which is many of us don't do, is really avoid the conflict. If you know responding to a situation is going to escalate it, make it worse, the best thing is play ostrich for a bit. So
Gayle's nodding. Yes.
Now, ostriches will ignore way too many conflicts, and so sometimes ostriches need to learn to engage a little bit quicker.
Do ostriches live longer as a result of the conflict?
Our joke is ostriches tend to climb, you know, an organizational ladder quite much faster because they avoid any conflict with anybody. It's like we're on ducks, you know, it's like kind of, you know, like water off the duck's back.
Yes.
So it's kind of an ostrich tend to be a survivor.
And what about that woodpecker? I don't think any of us wants to be in a conflict with a woodpecker.
Well, woodpeckers are probably, at least in our experience, are the ones that people most frequently complain about dealing with. And yet there's a real time and a place to be a woodpecker, too. You know, I often tell people some of the really amazing things that have happened in our world are because people were woodpeckers and didn't give up on an idea or a principle and said, no, this has to change. That's woodpecker behavior.
Well, really interesting to spend time with you. The book is called, if you have some conflict that needs resolution, the book is called Conflict is for the Birds. A pleasure to meet you, Nabil and Gayle, and such a pleasure to spend time with you, Elizabeth. Thanks for sharing your home and your day.
Well, thank you very much. It's been very